Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us this day as we continue our study of the book of Romans. We are in the fourth chapter and we're looking at an Old Testament character familiar to everyone, Abraham. We've seen how that the apostle anticipated the varied arguments that Jews made regarding Gentiles. Jewish Christians, many of them, were ones that did believe that Jesus was the Son of God and obeyed the gospel. But they also felt it necessary to keep the law and to circumcise their children. And when Gentiles were becoming baptized, the door of faith was opened unto them. The Jews insisted that they must be circumcised. They must keep the law. And Paul teaches that in Romans 1:16 that in the gospel is revealed two things: the power of God to salvation and a way unto righteousness. And the apostle is definite. This righteousness is apart from the works of the law. And so, to show to the Jewish Christians that Gentiles did not have to accept circumcision because the righteousness that God affords through the gospel is something that is not connected to the law at all. He called for them to consider Abraham their father. All of them would certainly have, with one resounding voice, insisted, yes, if anyone was ever saved, it was Abraham. And the record says that God and Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned unto him for righteousness. And he's the father of the faithful. But the apostle reminded these Jewish Christians that how was Abraham saved? Was he circumcised? No, he wasn't circumcised. Was he a keeper of the law? That wouldn't come for another 430 years. So he showed that their contention for the Gentile would exclude Abraham from being made righteous. The balance of chapter 4, where these points are made, the apostle deals with the greatness of Abraham's faith and how great it was. Here was a man that was one that lived in a foreign land, Haran. A man whose fathers and ancestors worshipped those things that were gods that were no gods. And one day God spoke to Abraham and told him, get up from your father's house, from your land, your home. You'll go to a land I will show you. And Abraham believed explicitly in God. For God had promised unto him, and your seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And so as Abraham went, he abode in the land of Israel, Canaan. Now, how many years he abode there before his son Isaac was born is difficult to know. He was 75 when God appeared to him in Haran, and in Ur, and then he departed for Haran. And how long he stayed in Haran, we do not know. He was 70 when it was that ultimately Isaac was born. So 25 years. And he laid and dwelt in the land of Canaan for a long period of time. And as he dwelt there, he didn't question God, but he did have problems. Because God had said, in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. And he had no seed at all. So he questioned the Lord about that. And the Lord carried him out at a starry night, nursed him to look at all the stars of heaven. It says, now, Abraham, if you count those stars, you'll see the number of descendants that you're going to have. For he declared unto Abraham that I have made you one that is a king. You're an heir over many nations, a father of many nations have I made you. And Abraham asked God about that. God gave him this instruction, this command that, yes, look at the stars. If you can count the stars, you can know the number. And the record declared again, and Abraham believed God. It was reckoned unto him for righteousness. The greatness of Abraham's faith cannot be exaggerated. Think about the greatness of this man. In the 4th chapter, as the apostle talks about this circumstance, he talks about Abraham's faith and said that of Abraham that through hope, he believed in hope, and that he looked and had hope where there was no cause for hope. And with Abraham, at 100 years old, there was no cause for hope. He was past the age of begetting children. Beside all that, Sarah, his wife, was barren and had been barren. She had never borne a child to him. So how could of this man that was past the age of begetting children, and a woman that had never been able to conceive of her first child, how could a son be born of such a union as that? But the record teaches, as far as Abraham was concerned, that in hope, he believed in hope. Notice what the Bible says about him, that God made him a father of many nations, and he said that God gives life to the dead and calls the things that are not as though they were. And that was true when God said to Abraham, I've made you a father of many nations. He didn't even have a son yet. And he called things that are not as though they were. Because God would make Abraham a father of many nations. And so as we look at Abraham, he was responsible through him and Sarah for many nations existing then and continue to exist today. The nation of Israel is a small nation, but those not just the seed of Abraham. Yes, through Isaac they are, but Abraham was one that begat children that made and populated the other lands around. In President Trump's first term, his ambassador worked among the nations of the Far East, the Abrahamic Accord, an agreement between those nations and Israel of varied things. It was an Abrahamic Accord because while they weren't Israelites, they were Abraham's descendants. And so he made him a father of many nations. But as the apostle speaks here of Abraham being a father of many nations, he wasn't just a father of those that were ones that were physical. He was a father of all those that believe, whether they were Jews or Gentiles. And the record declares that it was while he was in uncircumcision that God reckoned his faith unto him for righteousness. Abraham's faith was great. He counted him faithful that he believed. He was assured. He didn't waver through unbelief. He didn't stagger through doubt. He just believed God. And he was reckoned unto him for righteousness. Abraham's faith in believing God would give him Isaac was that also demonstrated not only when he gave him that son, but the command he gave to him about that son. When Isaac was grown up, God gave to Abraham another command. Take your son, Isaac, your only son. You offer him as a sacrifice for me and to me in a mountain I'm going to show you. And so Abraham went. He didn't ask the Lord any questions, but questions doubtless it must have been in his mind. And as we look at that, we find that he didn't waver again in that unbelief. He accounted that if he slew Isaac, God was able to raise him from the dead. And so he was. And so he took that son, he offered him as a sacrifice. But he didn't kill him because as he lifted the knife to take his son's life, God called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, do to your son no harm. Now, I know you fear me. Abraham's faith wasn't faith without works. Abraham's faith was that was demonstrated by the works he did. Abraham's faith is hard to duplicate. He believed in times when he did not have the revelation that you and I have accessible to us. And yet, we are to walk in the seed or in the faith of Abraham, whether we are a Jew or whether we are a Gentile, to emulate the faith he had, and he be the father of our faith. And our faith also is something that tests us, tests our real faith. For what has God promised to us? What has God said? He's told us that this world is not forever. And those that believe on his Son, who was delivered up for our trespasses and was one that was raised for our justification, that his Son is coming again. And his Son is going to speak, and every grave is going to open. The sea's going to give up the dead in him, death and Hades are going to give up the dead in them, and they're going to be raised, every man. And we're going to all stand before God. But we're not going to be raised as we died, because we died a mortal person. But when we're raised, we'll be an immortal person. And with one word, Jesus is going to speak and not only raise the dead, but he's going to destroy this world. The Bible speaks and tells us that with a word he began it, and certainly if with a word he began it, he can take it out. Psalms 33:9 says, he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. And God has told us to believe his Son's coming. So he's going to raise the dead. And those that have lived faithfully and sought to please God, they'll have an eternal home with God. But those that believe not will be cast to an everlasting fire. How great was Abraham's faith. And yes, how great our faith must be. But we have his promises. And just as his promise was sufficient to Abraham, because God was true and no liar, Abraham knew what God had promised. He not only had promised it, but he was able to do what he promised. And today we also know that God is true, and what he has promised he will do. And he not only will do it, he is able to do it. Faith on our part is important, essential. Without it, we cannot be saved. For the Hebrew writer says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Thank you for listening, friend. May God bless you and yours. May you walk with God.